What's up everybody? Tonight I'm going to be showing you how to install ISC N1 coilovers on my personal 2004 Infiniti G35 Coupe. This would be the same application for a 350Z or any of the Infiniti G35 Coupes. It's fairly straightforward, but the very first thing you want to do, this is probably one of the most important things, is you want to first, before lifting the car, before taking the tires off or anything like that, you want to measure from the ground to the top of your wheel well. This will show you where your car is sitting right now. This is important because later on, once you get the coils in, you really have to adjust your height to decide do you want to be sitting factory height or if you want to lower it. This will help you determine how much at each corner you need to adjust your coilovers. So I'm going to go around the car and I'm going to write down the measurements at each corner so I can use those later. Once you've gone around and got all your corners measured, the next thing you want to do is get your car jacked up off the ground. Take off your tires and we're going to start taking apart the existing suspension, and I'll show you up close how you do that. You want to start by taking off the 3 bolts. See right back there and right there. That hold on the top. See there, you can see a little better. That holds on to the top of your strut. Then you want to come down here underneath. So that's where those bolts would go through. Take out this main bolt down here. When I did this on the other side, I found it was a lot easier to get the strut out by taking off this nut, take out the cotter pin, take off this nut, kind of pinch these together in order to get this nut off. Separate the wishbone off, swing the wishbone up out of the way, and then you can pull the strut right out underneath it. I did have to use a strut compressor in order to get that, or a spring compressor in order to get that strut out. So make sure you want to swing by AutoZone or O'Reilly's and rent one. They're free to rent. They'll refund your money as soon as you bring it back, so it doesn't cost you anything. And it's definitely worth having. So right now I'll get that out and show you what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, I've got the front strut out. So what I'm going to do is with it out, I'm going to kind of walk you through what you do to get it out, because it's a little easier to see once it's out. So, as I said earlier, the first thing you're going to do is take out the 3 bolts or nuts that hold this top of the strut down. And then there's one through the bottom, goes through this hole right here. You'll have to use like a screwdriver or something to push the bolt through the control arm. Just using a rubber mallet, just kind of bang it through. It comes out pretty easily. And then once you get it out, I recommend using like a big flathead screwdriver and wedging it underneath the bottom basket of the strut and working it over into this area or back into this area. Makes it a lot easier to get it out later. You also want to make sure that you take off these brake lines and ABS lines when you're taking off the strut. They are mounted on the sides of it, and the ISC coils actually come with a really nice little bracket to put those back on. So once you get all that disconnected, you have the top bolts out and you got the bottom bolt out. The next thing you want to do is put your spring compressor on it so you can start squeezing that down so it's easier to get out. And then once you've got it pretty loose, you want to take out this bolt right here in the wishbone. And like I said, you got to kind of push it down to keep it from spinning. But once you get that out, see, this arm just goes really loose and the wishbone folds up out of the way. And what you can do is grab a hold of your strut, kind of pop it loose. I used a little wedge to push it down here at the top. And you can pull it forward and it'll make its way underneath the wishbone, and that way you can easily get it out. So that's how you get the front strut out. Fortunately, the coilovers go in a lot easier, and I'm going to grab that and show you how that goes in. I've got it over here. So to set this up, because you don't really know what the height is going to be, given that it has stiffer springs, It's really nice that these actually can be adjusted once they're in place. You can adjust them pretty easily. But what you want to do is get your bottom screwed on, and there's a little hole. It's probably going to be really hard to see, but there's a little hole in it right here, and that's called a view hole. And you want to make sure that you see threads all through that hole wherever you set it up, because that's the minimum for strength. And then you get the rest of your adjustment down here at the bottom. So what I did is I measured my existing coils, and then I am setting these ones a little bit less than that because they have a stiffer spring, and I also want to lower the car about an inch. So, but like I said before, they can be adjusted in place really easily. So you don't have to be perfect, you just want to get them kind of close. And let me finish setting that up and I'll show you how to put it in. Okay, I just found something kind of cool, and I wanted to show you guys real quick. If you turn this bottom section out, eventually you'll see this line in it. And it's a stop line, so you know you can't go any further than that. So you guys see that right there? There's a little smooth line right there. That just really shows how smart the guys at ISC are when they developed these. They really thought about putting them together and making sure that it's safe, and it really makes it straightforward application for installing these. So I've set these up to be about an inch shorter than the factory struts. Let me show you that. So should be about an inch of difference from center of hole to center of hole on those. I got just a little bit more. That's okay. So I'm hoping with that extra inch that it'll be just a little bit lower than stock. Not much, because remember, these are a lot stiffer springs. Also, to make it easier to install, I loosened this collar so that the spring is loose, so I don't have to fight the spring to get it in. I can just push down on the shock that's built into it. Make them a little easier to put in. So got this all opened up, ready to go in, and as soon as I can get someone to hold the camera for me, I will throw this in. Alright, ready to put the new coilover in. First thing, make sure it goes between the ABS line and the brake line. Alright, well, let's try putting the bottom in first. See if that's any easier. There you go. Go ahead and get the bottom bolt in. There you go. Come up here to the top. And put these top bolts in. Once you get all your bolts in up there, you can come back down here. Remember to re-hook up your vacuum lines for your ABS. Just switch these. And your brake line back here. So, and like I said before, if you don't have your height just right, you can come in here, just grab right onto here, and that right there is adjusting the height. So it's as easy as that. I'll get this buttoned up and then we'll move to the back. Alright, now that the front is all buttoned up, we're ready to start on the back. First thing to do, of course, remove the factory suspension. So, here on the back, it's actually really simple. It's a coil and shock setup. So we've got our coil over here, and we've got our shock right here. Take the shock off. There's 2 bolts here at the top. Take off those, one back here in the shadow you can't see. And then a big bolt at the bottom, right down here. Take those 3 bolts out, shock comes right out. The spring, in order to get the spring out, it's easiest to take this bolt off right here and let this whole basket just swing down. Makes it really easy to get out. Put something under it. I've got a jack with a block on it underneath it, so I can use that to not only drop it safely, but also to put in the new spring and jack it up into place so I can rebolt it. So I'll get those bolts out and then we'll start putting in the new ones. Okay, as you can see, got the shock and spring out. Just able to get the spring out, pushing that basket down. Now, one thing before we start installing the new stuff to keep in mind is that your packet comes with this nut, 2 of these nuts right here. These are going to go onto your shock, right on the side of it right there. Now, the reason for that is the factory shock has the nut built into it. So this replaces that nut right there. So let's go ahead, grab our shock, and we're going to line it up on those studs up there. Just there we go. And then we'll push down on this knuckle and get that in there. And then I'll show you how to do the spring once I get this in. Okay, so I got the shock in. Got the bolts on the top, bolts on the bottom. There's that extra nut that comes with the kit that you use right there. And just like the front, you don't have to take these out to adjust your height. You just loosen this ring right here, and then you can turn the entire shock right here to adjust your height. So it makes it real easy. Now, to put in the spring, you want to note that there's actually a low spot in this basket right here, and that'll correspond with this low spot on your spring. Now I'm reusing my spring cushions from my factory setup, and this end's going to go into the bottom, and then there's this rubber ring, and it's a little bit flatter here. That's going to be your top, and that collar right there is going to slide into it. So you're going to drop your spring in just like so. Make sure you turn it until that low spot locks in right there, and trust me, you'll feel it. And then we're just going to push this down, slide our collar in there, push it back up, and then we'll use the floor jack to push that basket back up to line up those 2 right there. So, alright, got those in. Just need to tighten up all the bolts. One thing to keep in mind is when you're putting in a through bolt like this one down here, is you really don't want to beat it into place. You want to use a rubber mallet maybe to tap it, and then try and thread it, or use the floor jack to twist the plate a little bit. Whatever you got to do, you just don't really want to force that bolt through. You'll end up messing up the threads. So now that all the components are on, throw the rims and tires back on, drop it to the ground, and then we can start adjusting our heights. Hey everybody, so the car is now down, back on the ground, tires and wheels are on, and it's time to check how well we set our height on the suspension. So as you remember, we wrote down what the original height was with the factory, and I'm going for about an inch drop. See, right now I'm at 28 inches. So I'm actually sitting almost an inch higher than it was with factory. So right here on my list, I'm going to write down I'm at 28 inches. So I know that I need to drop, if I want an inch drop, I need to take almost 2 inches out of the suspension. And you're going to go around to each corner and do the exact same thing. This way you can get exactly how much you need to adjust each corner. So this one's at 27 3/4. Write it down here on the list. There you go. Once you have all your heights written down, you can then lift up each corner, take off the tire, and adjust the suspension at each corner to the exact amount that you want for the drop. So I'll get the car back up on the corner with the tire off, and I'll show you how to adjust the suspension. Hey guys, now that I got the rims and tires off on one side, I can show you how to adjust your suspension in place. So if you come on down in here, it's a little dark, but we've got the lower retainer ring and the upper retainer rings. And we already, at least for me, I did my numbers and found out that I need to take off 1 3/4 inches off of this coilover right here. So what I'm going to do is adjust this ring up to 1 3/4 inches. More. Okay, so right there I'm at 1 3/4 inches. So what I want to do is you'll use your wrench to loosen this up. Is I'm going to drop this retainer ring for the preset on the springs, and I'm going to bring it on down here and tighten it up on this one so I don't lose my place here. So I'm going to tighten those two onto each other. There. Double check my measurement. Yeah, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is actually grab onto the tower, and you might have to use 2 hands for this, but I'm going to turn and I'm going to make sure the spring stays with the tower, and I'm just going to adjust this down until all this gap is closed up, and then I should be at the right height. Now at the back, I learned a few lessons. This needs to come off. This is sitting on top of your spring, your factory springs. I thought maybe it needed to stay in, but it actually needs to come off. It's the only way you get the adjustment out of that. And even with this at 1 inch drop, I've pretty much used up all my adjustability down here. I did leave the bottom cushion in just so it has some cushion here as well as on the bottom. But if you want more drop, you could always take that one out as well. So you use your big spanner wrench. There's an Allen wrench on the, let's see if I can find it right here. So you see this Allen wrench, you're going to loosen that, and then you use your big spanner wrench, and you should be able to turn this ring to adjust it to the height you want. And then make sure you tighten that back down. Once you have your spring adjusted, see how it's loose right now? You're going to want to adjust your shock, suck up some of that distance until this is tight, because you don't want this flopping around at full drop. So, and once you get those in, make sure you tighten all your rings down in the proper place. You're good to go.